Right now, if you had a tiny paper cut on your finger, what would you do? You would put on a bandage and move on, right? But 100 years ago, that simple cut was your death sentence. And believe it or not, the miracle that saved billions of lives was not found through a planned experiment, but thanks to a window that was simply left open. The lead role of our story is a Scottish biologist, Alexander Fleming, but erase from your mind the image of a white-coated meticulous scientist. Fleming was a genius, but incredibly messy. His laboratory looked more like an exploded archive room than a science center. But behind this mess, there was a trauma that kept him awake at night. On the front of the First World War, he had watched thousands of young men die screaming from septicemia, also known as blood poisoning. Doctors were helpless. The medicines they used did not kill the bacteria, and instead destroyed the immune systems of the soldiers. Fleming had one single obsession: to find a magic bullet that could hunt down those microscopic monsters without harming the body. The summer of 1928, while going on vacation, Fleming once again did his famous laziness. He left the petri dishes full of deadly staphylococcus bacteria on the bench without cleaning them, and he left the laboratory window open. The humid wind of London entered inside. In the billions of dust particles carried by that wind, there was an uninvited guest, a microscopic mold spore. This spore drifted and out of millions of possibilities. It landed right inside the petri dish Fleming had forgotten. The 3rd of September 1928, Fleming returned. He began cleaning the bench. He was throwing spoiled samples one by one into the disinfectant bucket. Just as he was about to throw one more away, his hand froze in the air. A normal person would say disgusting, moldy, and throw it away. But Fleming stopped. He narrowed his eyes. A blue-green mold had grown in the dish. But the truly shocking part was this: the deadly bacteria around the mold had disappeared. The mold had created an invisible shield around itself. Fleming called this penicillin. Its liquid could tear apart even the wildest bacteria. But there was a big problem. This substance was like a ghost. It spoiled the moment it was obtained, and it could not be turned into a usable medicine. Fleming gave up. Humanity had found the recipe but could not make the drug. The file was shelved. Exactly 10 years later, the year 1938, while the shadow of Hitler was falling over Europe, two crazy scientists at Oxford found that dusty file. Howard Florey and the genius chemist Ernst Chain, who had escaped from the Nazis. They had no time. They had no money. The state had allocated all funding to weapons. So what did they do? They built the strangest laboratory in the history of science. Using cheese drums, milk bottles, and even urine jars collected from hospitals, they began growing mold. The laboratory was under an unbearable smell. Their goal was to obtain that brown powder. After months of sleepless nights, they had only a teaspoon of pure penicillin. This powder was more valuable than all the diamonds in the world at that moment. 1941, the first trial. The patient was Albert Alexander, a simple police officer whose face had been scratched by a rose thorn. The infection had eaten his eye and taken over his body. He was waiting to die. The team gave him all the penicillin they had. The result was a miracle. Within 24 hours, his fever dropped and he sat up in his bed. But the supply was running out. They were so desperate that they even filtered the drug from the patient's urine and gave it back into his veins. But it was not enough. The drug ran out, and the bacteria returned for revenge. Albert Alexander lost his life. It was a tragic end, but it was proof. The drug worked. They just needed more of it. The war broke out. England was being bombed. Florey smeared the mold on the lining of his jacket and escaped to America so that the Nazis would not steal the formula. American factories were ready, but Fleming's mold was too delicate and could not be produced in large quantities. A stronger and wilder mold was needed. The mold on a rotten candle brought by laboratory assistant Mary Hunt was 200 times stronger than Fleming's. The ancestor of all the penicillin we use today is that cantaloupe. The 6th of June 1944. In the bags of the soldiers landing in Normandy, there were not only bullets, but millions of doses of penicillin. During the First World War, the death rate from infection had been 18%, but thanks to this miracle, it dropped below 1%. Fleming's dark prophecy about trained bacteria is today the greatest battlefield of modern medicine. But even in the shadow of this harsh truth, the enormous impact of that coincidence cannot be denied. That open window carried inside not only air, but also the ability to perform organ transplants, cancer treatments, and every kind of complex surgery. This is why every time we swallow that little pill, we remember that it is nothing more than a strange combination of genius and simple forgetfulness. Do not forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more.